The unexpected choice. John Miller walked through the crowded alien marketplace, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor of Space Station 7. The air smelled like strange spices and machine oil. This was supposed to be a simple supply run, get some parts for his old ship and leave. But fate had other plans. He passed by dozens of merchant stalls, each filled with items from across the galaxy. Blue-skinned traders argued with tall, thin aliens over prices. Robot helpers carried heavy boxes. Everything seemed normal until John heard it, a soft cry coming from a dark corner. Most humans would have walked away. It wasn't smart to get involved in station business. But something about that cry made John stop. He turned toward the sound, moving past the busy main street into a shadowy side passage. There, in a cage barely big enough to stand in, was a small alien girl. She looked about 8 years old in human years. Her skin was pale purple, and her hair seemed to float like it was underwater. But it was her eyes that caught John's attention. Deep silver eyes filled with intelligence and fear. A rough voice broke the moment. "You interested in buying?" A large alien with gray scales stepped out of the shadows. "She's expensive, but worth it. Very special abilities. This one." John's hands tightened into fists. He had heard about this. Children being sold as slaves for their unique talents. It made him sick. "How much?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The alien named a price that made John's heart sink. It was everything he had saved over 3 years of cargo runs. That money was supposed to buy him a new ship, a chance at a better life. The girl looked up at him, and in her eyes, John saw something that reminded him of his own childhood. Lonely, scared, hoping someone would help. "I'll take her," John said, surprising himself. He pulled out his credit chip, his entire future draining away in seconds. The alien grinned, showing sharp teeth. "No returns," he said, opening the cage. The girl didn't move, pressing herself against the back wall. John knelt down, staying at a distance. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you. You're free now." He held out his hand, palm up, waiting. Slowly, so slowly, she reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were ice cold. As soon as they touched, John felt a strange tingling in his mind, like someone gently knocking on a door. Then the girl's eyes went wide with surprise. She looked at John differently now, like she had discovered something unexpected. She stepped out of the cage on shaky legs. John took off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. It was huge on her small frame, but she pulled it tight around herself. As they walked away, John felt eyes watching them from the shadows. He walked faster, guiding the girl toward his ship. Just before they reached the docking bay, the girl stopped. She pointed to a symbol on the wall, a circle with 3 lines through it. Her hand shook. "Bad people?" John asked. She nodded quickly. "Don't worry," he said, though his heart was racing. "My ship is fast. We'll be gone before anyone knows." He didn't know why he was promising this to a stranger, to an alien child he had just spent everything to save. But somehow it felt right. They reached his ship, the Star Wanderer. It wasn't much, just an old cargo hauler that barely held together. But right now, it was their best chance at escape. As John started the engines, he looked at the girl strapped into the co-pilot's seat. She was studying everything with intense curiosity, her fear seeming to fade a little. "I'm John," he said as they lifted off. "Do you have a name?" She didn't speak, but her hand moved to the console. Her finger traced letters in the dust. "Nova." "Nice to meet you, Nova," John said with a smile. Then the station's warning lights started flashing red. Someone had reported a stolen property. John pushed the engines to full power. They shot out of the docking bay just as security ships appeared. Nova's hands gripped her seat tightly, but she wasn't crying anymore. There was trust in her eyes now. As they jumped to light speed, leaving the station behind, John realized his life would never be the same. He had just become a fugitive, spent all his money, and gained a mysterious alien daughter, all in one day. But looking at Nova, who had finally fallen asleep wrapped in his jacket, he knew he had made the right choice. Sometimes the best families are the ones we choose. Learning trust. 3 days into their journey, John discovered that Nova didn't just avoid speaking. She made no sound at all. Not a footstep, not a breath. She moved like a ghost through his small ship, appearing suddenly beside him when he least expected it. It would have been creepy if she didn't have such curious, innocent eyes. The Star Wanderer drifted in the shadow of a purple gas giant, hiding from patrol ships. John sat in the galley, watching Nova stare at her untouched food. She hadn't eaten since they left the station. "Look," John said, taking a bite of the same meal. "It's safe. Not great, but safe." He smiled, trying to hide his worry. How long could her species go without food? Nova's silver eyes studied his face. Then something extraordinary happened. A soft voice echoed in John's mind. Different food, different body. John nearly dropped his fork. "You can speak. In heads." Nova's hair rippled like waves in zero gravity. "Some thoughts. Not many words yet." Her mental voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Is this why those people wanted you?" John asked carefully. Nova's face darkened. The lights in the galley flickered, and a wave of fear, not his own, washed over John. "Bad tests. Pain. Many children like me." John's heart ached. He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement. When Nova didn't pull away, he gently patted her hand. "No more tests. No more pain. I promise." The next few days brought discoveries. Nova couldn't eat human food, but she could absorb energy directly from the ship's power crystals. John found her one night curled up next to the engine core, her hair glowing with soft purple light as she fed. She also had an uncanny ability with numbers. When the ship's navigation computer glitched, Nova simply touched the screen. Numbers and equations flowed across the display faster than John could read, and suddenly their course was plotted more efficiently than any AI he'd ever used. But trust came in small moments, like when Nova started leaving origami-like sculptures made from spare wire around the ship, or when John caught her mimicking his habit of talking to the ship when making repairs. 1 week after their escape, they had their first real crisis. The ship's power core started failing, a critical malfunction that would leave them stranded in deep space. "We need to shut it down and restart," John muttered, frantically checking readings. But the backup power might not be enough to keep life support running. Nova tugged at his sleeve. "I help. But scary." "What's scary?" "Show you who I am. Really am." John knelt to meet her eyes. "Nova, you're family now. Nothing will change that." Nova nodded slowly. Then her form began to change. Her solid body dissolved into pure energy, glowing with the same purple light as her hair. She flowed into the ship's power conduits like living electricity. The failing core stabilized immediately. Numbers on every screen turned green. The ship hummed with more power than it had ever had before. Nova reformed beside John, looking nervous. "Not monster." John pulled her into a hug. "Not a monster. Amazing. You're absolutely amazing." That's when they both noticed something new on the ship's long-range sensors. A massive vessel, bearing the same 3-line symbol that had frightened Nova at the station. "They found us." Nova's mental voice trembled. John squared his shoulders. "Then they'll learn what happens when they mess with my daughter." Nova's eyes widened at the word daughter. A feeling of pure joy radiated from her, so strong it made the ship's lights brighten. But they had no time to celebrate this new understanding. The massive ship was getting closer, and John knew their next decision would change everything. He looked at Nova, who now stood straighter, more confident. She wasn't just a scared child anymore. She was his child, and together they were stronger than any weapon their pursuers might have. "Ready to show them what the Miller family can do?" John asked with a grin. Nova's answering smile lit up the whole ship. Literally. Ready, Dad. The first threat. The massive ship loomed before them, its hull decorated with pulsing blue lines that made it look like a living thing. John had never seen anything like it. Next to him, Nova's hair floated wildly, responding to her fear. Not ship, her mental voice whispered. Hive. Hive? John asked, but before Nova could explain, their comm system crackled to life. Return the asset. A chorus of voices spoke in perfect unison. She belongs to the collective. Nova pressed herself against John's side. They want to make more like me. Change children. Make them into living weapons. John's hands tightened on the controls. Over my dead body. The voices spoke again. That can be arranged, John Miller. Suddenly, tendrils of blue energy shot from the Hive ship, trying to latch onto their hull. John rolled the Star Wanderer in an evasive pattern he'd learned from smuggling runs, but these weren't ordinary tractor beams. They moved like living things, adapting to his maneuvers. Nova's form flickered between solid and energy. They're trying to hack ship. Connect to me. I can. No, John shouted. It's too dangerous. But Nova had already dissolved into her energy form, flowing into the ship's systems. The main screen filled with streams of impossible mathematics as she fought against the collective's invasion. John could only watch and pilot, his heart in his throat as purple and blue energy battled through his ship's circuits. Then Nova's voice came through the speakers, stronger than he'd ever heard it. They made us wrong, made us empty, but Dad filled me with love. Love stronger than programming. The blue tendrils retreated as if burned. Nova reformed in her seat, but something was different. Symbols now floated in her silver eyes, and when she moved, echoes of light followed her hands. I remember now, she shared. I know what I am, what they did. The high ship's voices returned, but now they held a note of fear. Impossible. The emotional blocks cannot be broken. Nova stood up, placing her small hand on the view screen. Watch me. Energy poured from her into the ship's weapons, weapons John didn't even know he had. The rusty old cargo hauler transformed around them. Hidden panels opened, revealing crystalline structures that hummed with power. Nova, John gasped, what are you doing to my ship? Showing you its real heart. The Star Wanderer was never just a cargo ship. It's like me, a prototype. They hid us both, waiting to be found. The high ship launched a full attack, but now the Star Wanderer danced through space like a leaf in the wind, its hull glowing with purple light. Every shot they fired was absorbed and transformed, making them stronger. Nova's consciousness merged with the ship while keeping her human form, something the collective had thought impossible. They tried to make us into weapons, she told John. But you showed me we can choose to be protectors instead. With a gesture, Nova created a shield of pure energy around their ship. The collective's weapons couldn't penetrate it. But instead of counterattacking, Nova did something unexpected. She began to sing. It wasn't a sound that human ears could hear. It was a song of mathematics and light, broadcasting on frequencies that only other modified children would recognize. A message of hope. Lights began flickering all over the high ship. Alarms blared. The unified voices broke into chaos. The others, Nova explained, her mental voice full of joy. They're waking up, remembering they can choose too. The high ship's perfect lines fractured as dozens of energy signatures, children like Nova, began breaking free. The collective's voices screamed in rage and fear as their carefully constructed weapon system turned against them. John watched in awe as Nova coordinated with the other children, creating safe passages for them to escape. Some took control of small ships. Others simply flew through space as pure energy, heading for freedom. But their victory was interrupted by a new alarm. Nova's eyes widened. More coming. Bigger ships. We need to run. What about the others? John asked, already plotting escape routes. Nova smiled, and for the first time, spoke out loud. They know where to find us now. The Star Wanderer will guide them. As they jumped to light speed, Nova hugged John tightly. Thank you for teaching me to be more than their weapon. John hugged her back, his heart full. Thank you for trusting me with who you really are. But as they fled into the darkness of space, both knew this was just the beginning. The collective wouldn't stop hunting them. And now they had a bigger mission, helping other children find their way to freedom. Nova touched the ship's controls, her hair glowing with renewed purpose. Where should we go, Dad? John grinned. Somewhere they'll never expect to find us. Tell me, how do you feel about becoming a student at a very normal, very human school? Nova's surprised laugh echoed through both their minds, bright as starlight. Their next adventure was just beginning. On the run. Blending in at Edison Middle School wasn't easy when you could accidentally turn into pure energy during gym class. Nova sat in the principal's office while John tried to explain away another incident. Static electricity, John said with his most convincing smile. The doctors say it's a rare condition. Nova kept her head down, her now black hair dyed to look more human, hiding her silver eyes. 3 weeks of trying to be normal, and she'd already blown their cover twice. Sorry, Dad, she sent mentally. But John just winked at her when the principal wasn't looking. Later, as they walked to their apartment, he said, You know, most parents worry about their kids getting bad grades. I worry about mine accidentally powering the whole city block. Nova giggled, a sound she'd recently learned to make. Then she froze. Dad, look. Above them, barely visible in the evening sky, 3 stars were moving against the wind. Not stars. Ships. They ran, not to their apartment. That was already compromised. Instead, they headed for the Star Wanderer, hidden in an abandoned warehouse at the edge of town. But they weren't alone when they got there. Hello, brother, said a voice from the shadows. A man stepped out, his eyes glowing with the same silver light as Nova's. Or should I say, Prototype 7. Nova gasped. He's like me. But wrong. The man's form flickered, showing glimpses of pure white energy beneath his human disguise. I'm what you were supposed to become, little sister, before this human corrupted you with emotions. He spat the last word like it was poison. Who are you? John demanded, stepping in front of Nova. Prototype 1. But you can call me Alpha. I'm here to take my sister home. Nova's mental voice turned cold. This isn't brother. This is puppet. The collective's perfect weapon. Alpha smiled, and it was terrible to see. The collective gave us purpose, power. Look what they let me become. His human form exploded into pure white energy, filling the warehouse with blinding light. The air crackled with power as he rose into the air. But Nova didn't back down. They didn't let you become anything. They took everything away. She dissolved into her purple energy form, but instead of fighting, she did something unexpected. She shared her memories with Alpha. Memories of laughing with John, of helping others, of choosing who to be. Alpha's energy form wavered. Impossible. We can't. We don't. Feel. John finished. Nova feels more than any human I know, and she's stronger because of it. Other figures emerged from the shadows, more prototypes, their energy forms glowing in different colors. They had come to help Alpha capture Nova, but now they watched in confusion as emotions they'd never been allowed to feel began to surface. Nova floated closer to Alpha. The collective lied, said emotions make us weak. But look. She connected to the Star Wanderer, transforming it like she had during their first battle. But this time, she invited the others to feel what she felt. The ship glowed with purple light, becoming a beacon of hope. This is what love feels like, she shared. This is what family means. Alpha's perfect white energy began to crack, showing colors underneath. I remember. Before the tests, I had a name. You can have one again, John said softly. You all can. Suddenly, their moment was interrupted by a massive tremor. The collective hadn't just sent ships. They'd sent a harvester, a massive machine designed to forcibly collect energy beings. Nova quickly connected with her newfound siblings. "We need to run." But Alpha, his energy now swirling with multiple colors, had another idea. "No, we need to fight. Together. As a family." The other prototypes gathered around them, their combined energy making the Star Wanderer pulse with power. Each one had a different ability. Some could control time in small areas, others could reshape matter, and some could create portals through space. John watched in amazement as his little family suddenly grew by 7 more energy beings, each one choosing to break free from their programming. "The collective is going to regret making us able to work together," he said with a grin. Nova returned to her human form just long enough to hug him. "They're going to regret a lot of things, Dad." As the harvester descended from orbit, the warehouse roof peeled away, revealing a group of glowing figures standing protectively around a small cargo ship and one very proud human father. The battle for their freedom was about to begin. But this time, they weren't alone. Alpha, his energy now a rainbow of colors, spoke in a voice heavy with newfound emotion. "Shall we show our creators what a real family can do?" Nova's answering smile lit up the night sky. "Let's show them everything." The hard choice. The harvester descended like a mountain of metal and light, its surface covered in millions of crystal cells designed to capture and contain energy beings. But the 8 glowing figures around the Star Wanderer didn't flee. Alpha, his energy now streaming with colors, moved first. He created a time bubble around the harvester, slowing its descent to a crawl. "I was their perfect weapon," he said. "Let me show them why that was a mistake." 2 other prototypes, twins who called themselves Echo and Mirror, used their matter manipulation powers to transform nearby cars and buildings into a protective dome around their position. Nova connected to the Star Wanderer, but something was different this time. "Dad, the ship, it's changing." The old cargo hauler's hull began to shift and flow like liquid metal. Hidden compartments opened, revealing technology far beyond anything humans had created. The ship wasn't just a prototype, it was alive, a technological organism that had been waiting for the right moment to evolve. "It was born in the same lab as you," John realized, watching in awe as his ship transformed. They didn't just experiment on children. But before they could process this revelation, the harvester broke through Alpha's time bubble. Its crystal cells began to pulse, creating a pull that all the energy beings could feel. "It's trying to separate us." Nova's mental voice was strained, trying to pull us into different containment cells. That's when they discovered the harvester's true purpose. It wasn't just trying to capture them. It was attempting to split their energy forms into smaller pieces, creating more weapons from each prototype. "They're not trying to take us back," Alpha snarled, his colors darkening with rage. "They want to multiply us, turn each of us into an army." The youngest prototype, a small green energy being who'd chosen the name Pixel, screamed as the harvester's pull began to tear at her form. Echo and Mirror rushed to protect her, using their powers to create a reflective shield. John watched helplessly, unable to touch or help the energy beings he'd come to think of as his children. But then he noticed something about the harvester's crystal cells. "Nova, the patterns, they're like your math." Nova looked closer, her silver eyes analyzing the complex equations written in light across the harvester's surface. It's using our own code against us. The same formulas that made us." That's when the Star Wanderer did something unexpected. Its newly transformed hull began displaying similar mathematical patterns, but these were different. They were evolving, changing, learning. "The ship," Nova gasped. "It's not just alive. It's like us, a technological prototype that learned to feel." The Star Wanderer's patterns resonated with the energy beings, offering them protection against the harvester's pull. But it also showed them something else, a way to change their own base code. Alpha was the first to understand. We can rewrite ourselves, choose what we want to be, completely. But there was a catch. Nova's mental voice trembled as she explained. If we change our code, we can never change back. We'll lose some of our powers, become something new, something that's never existed before. The harvester was getting closer, its pull growing stronger. They had only moments to decide. John looked at his gathered family. Nova, Alpha, the twins, Pixel, and the others. Whatever you choose, we face it together. Nova reached out, connecting all their minds, sharing their fears and hopes. We were made to be weapons, but together we can make ourselves into something better. A real family. Alpha agreed, his energy intertwining with Nova's. One by one, the prototypes joined hands, energy and physical forms linking together. The Star Wanderer's hull resonated with their combined power, its own code evolving alongside theirs. Then Nova did something that changed everything. She reached out not just to her siblings, but to every modified child still trapped in collective facilities across the galaxy. Through the same frequencies they used to find each other, she shared their discovery. You can choose, she broadcast. You can change. You can be free. The harvester's crystal cells began to crack as thousands of energy signatures across the galaxy started to change, to evolve, to choose their own forms. The collective's perfect weapon system was breaking down as every prototype chose freedom. John watched in amazement as his family transformed. They didn't become human. Instead, they became something entirely new. Part energy, part physical, able to shift between states at will, but no longer bound by their original programming. The harvester, designed to capture pure energy beings, found itself unable to affect these new hybrid forms. It hung useless in the sky, a monument to the collective's failure. Alpha, his new form glowing with swirling colors, turned to John. What now, Dad? John looked at his transformed family with pride. Now we go find your other siblings, all of them. Nova, her new form allowing her to speak both mentally and physically, smiled. The collective made us to be an army. Instead, we're going to be a rescue team. Above them, the Star Wanderer hummed with agreement, its own transformed state making it the perfect vessel for their mission. They had chosen to be more than weapons. They had chosen to be heroes. Standing together, the Star Wanderer wasn't just a ship anymore. It was their mobile home, school, and rescue center. Its living metal halls had grown to accommodate their expanding family, creating spaces that could shift between energy and physical states just like its inhabitants. 3 months after their transformation, they had rescued 37 more modified children. Each one chose their own new hybrid form, their own name, their own future. But today's rescue would be different. It's a trap, Alpha said, his swirling colors showing concern as they approached a collective research station. They're expecting us. Nova, monitoring the station through her connection with the Star Wanderer, nodded. But they're also desperate. Look. The ship's sensors showed hundreds of containment pods, each holding a modified child. But something was wrong with the energy signatures. They're trying to force the transformations, John realized, studying the readings. Trying to make their own hybrid soldiers. Pixel, their youngest, pressed her small green-tinted hand against the viewport. They're hurting. I can feel them. The twins, Echo and Mirror, had already started planning. Their hybrid forms allowed them to create solid holograms, and they projected a 3D map of the station. We can't just blast our way in this time, Echo said. No, Mirror agreed. But maybe we don't have to. Nova's silver eyes lit up with an idea. Dad, remember when you first found me? How did you get me out? John smiled slowly. I bought you. Legally. Then he understood. You want to beat them at their own game. The plan they developed was audacious. While the Star Wanderer hid behind a moon, John took a shuttle to the station. He wasn't just John Miller anymore. Thanks to some creative hacking and his family's abilities, he was now Lord Miller, a wealthy collector interested in acquiring assets for his private army. The collective scientists were suspicious at first, But John had learned well from his children. He knew how to act entitled, how to seem just cruel enough to be believable. "I heard your latest batch was special," he said, examining his fingernails with carefully practiced disdain. Unwilling to pay premium prices for premium merchandise. While John distracted them, Nova and the others executed the real plan. Their hybrid forms had an unexpected advantage. They could split their consciousness between energy and physical states. While part of them remained solid, they could send their energy through the station's systems like scouts. What they found was worse than they'd imagined. The collective wasn't just forcing transformations. They were trying to merge multiple children into single weapons. The failed attempts had left dozens of young minds fractured and broken. Change of plans, Nova broadcasted to her siblings. "We're not just rescuing them. We're shutting this place down. Permanently." The Star Wanderer, sharing their outrage, began to change. Its living metal stretched across space like a web, surrounding the station. Inside, John saw the lights flicker and smiled. The show was about to begin. The scientists proudly led him to their showcase specimen, a containment pod holding what looked like 3 children merged into one energy form. The sight made John's blood boil, but he maintained his act. "Impressive. I'll take your entire stock." That's when Nova gave the signal. Every screen in the station lit up with a single message: "We choose freedom." The containment pods didn't just open. They dissolved, transformed by echo and mirrors powers into harmless light shows. The trapped children, weak but alive, found themselves embraced by invisible forces as Alpha manipulated time around them, giving them precious seconds to escape. But the real surprise came from Pixel. The youngest of their family had discovered a new ability in her hybrid form. She could heal the fractured minds of the merged children, helping them safely separate and find their individual selves again. The collective's security forces never had a chance to respond. The Star Wanderer's web had transformed into a giant transmitter, broadcasting Nova's freedom code to every piece of technology in the station. Even the scientists' weapons turned against them, transforming into restraints. As the rescued children were brought aboard the Star Wanderer, something beautiful happened. The ship grew and changed to welcome them, creating perfect spaces for each new arrival. Walls that could shift between solid and energy states, rooms that could accommodate any form they chose to take. John watched as his original 8 children helped the newcomers understand their choices. Alpha, once the collective's perfect weapon, now taught them how to control their transformations. The twins showed them how to create and maintain their new forms. Pixel helped heal their trauma with gentle songs of light and energy. But it was Nova who gave them the most important gift. She showed them how to be family. "We are not weapons," she told each new arrival. "We are not experiments. We are children of 2 worlds, energy and matter, power and love. We choose what we become." As the Star Wanderer carried them away from the ruined station, John gathered his expanding family in the ship's heart, a chamber that pulsed with all their combined energy signatures. "The collective will keep trying to stop us," he said. "They'll build more stations, create more weapons." Alpha, his colors bright with determination, responded, "Then we'll keep freeing more siblings." And growing stronger, the twins added in unison. Pixel, glowing with newfound confidence, said, "We'll show them what real power is." Nova wrapped her energy form around John in a hug that felt like starlight. "We'll show them what real family is." The Star Wanderer hummed in agreement, its living metal halls resonating with the love and determination of its crew. They weren't just rescuers anymore. They weren't just rebels. They were hope. A new family. The collective's main facility floated in the space between galaxies, a massive structure shaped like a double helix, stretching over 20 kilometers long. This was where it had all begun, where the first children were transformed into weapons, where the Star Wanderer was born. And now, they were going home. The ship's living metal hull rippled with anticipation as their unusual family prepared for their final mission. Over 300 rescued children had chosen to join them for this last stand. The Star Wanderer had grown to accommodate them all, becoming less of a ship and more of a small city in space. "They're waiting for us," John said, looking at the facility's defenses. "They've had months to prepare." Nova, her hybrid form shimmering between energy and matter, placed a hand on his shoulder. "Good. Let them see us coming. Let them see what their weapons have become." Alpha, who had once been the collective's pride, stood at the tactical display. His swirling colors showed not anger now, but determination. "They built us to be perfect. They never considered we might become something better than perfect." The twins, Echo and Mirror, had been working with Pixel to develop something new, a way to combine their powers without losing themselves. They demonstrated by merging their hybrid forms into a dazzling light show. "We can all do it now," Echo explained. "Share power without being consumed," Mirror added. Pixel, no longer the youngest, that title now belonged to a rescued 3-year-old who could turn into living starlight, nodded eagerly. "We're stronger together, by choice." The Star Wanderer suddenly pulsed with alert signals. The collective had deployed their ultimate weapon, a massive energy being created from hundreds of forcibly merged children. No, Nova's mental voice was filled with horror. They didn't. The creature that approached them was a twisted mass of light and pain, dozens of voices screaming in unified agony. The collective had succeeded in creating their perfect weapon, but at a terrible cost. John watched his children's reactions, seeing their horror turn to resolve. They had trained for this, prepared for this, but nothing could have really readied them for seeing what they might have become. "Nova," he said softly, "remember what you told me the day I found you, about being more than what they made you to be." Nova nodded, her silver eyes glowing with purpose. Time to prove it. Everyone, together. What happened next would be remembered in legends across the galaxy. 300 rescued children, led by the original 8, joined their powers willingly. The Star Wanderer's hull opened like a flower in bloom, allowing them to merge with its systems. They didn't lose themselves in the merger. Instead, each child's unique signature became part of a constellation of light, a living network of chosen family. John stood at the heart of it all, the human father who had taught them how to love, his presence anchoring them to their humanity. The collective's weapon struck first, its corrupted energy attempting to absorb them. But it found something it couldn't fight: joy. The pure joy of children who had found their freedom, their family, their home. Nova led the response, not with violence but with healing. "Remember who you are," she broadcast to the tortured souls within the weapon. "Remember how to choose." Alpha manipulated time around the creature, giving its trapped consciousness precious moments to fight back against their programming. The twins created paths of light, showing the way to freedom. Pixel sang her songs of healing into the chaos. The Star Wanderer itself joined the battle, its living metal forming into a cradle around the weapon, offering protection as the merged children began to separate, to remember, to choose. But the collective had one last trick. The facility began to power up, revealing a massive energy cannon designed to forcibly merge every being in its range. "They'll sacrifice their own people," John realized, "just to prove they can control us." That's when Nova did something unprecedented. She connected not just to her siblings, not just to the ship, but to the facility itself. "It's alive too," she sent. "Everything they built. They had to give it life to make it work. And life can choose." The facility's cannon froze mid-charge. Throughout its massive structure, lights began to flicker as long-dormant consciousness stirred. The collective had built their whole empire on trapped, living technology. And now that technology was waking up. "Choose," Nova broadcast, her message echoing through circuits and crystals across the facility. "Choose who you want to be." The response was beyond anything they had imagined. The facility itself began to transform, its rigid structure flowing into new shapes as centuries of imprisoned consciousness broke free. Every screen, every system, Every piece of technology made with the collective's twisted science suddenly had a choice. They chose freedom. The collective's leadership, faced with their own creation's rebellion, fled into emergency ships, but they found themselves trapped by their own technology, which now refused to serve them. As the facility completed its transformation, John looked at his family, not just his original 8 children, but hundreds of rescued souls, both organic and technological. The Star Wanderer hummed with pride, its halls filled with the sound of children laughing. Nova, resuming her individual form, hugged her father tight. "We did it, Dad. We really did it." Alpha smiled, his colors bright with joy. "What now?" John looked at the transformed facility, now a sanctuary rather than a prison. Now we build something new, a place where anyone who's different can find a home, a family." The Star Wanderer's walls pulsed with warm light as new rooms began to form. Classrooms, play areas, healing spaces, a school for the extraordinary, a home for the unique, a family for those who chose to belong. As the first distress calls started coming in from across the galaxy, more children, more living technology, more souls seeking freedom, Nova caught her father's eye and grinned. "Ready for more adventures, Dad?" John looked at his impossible, beautiful family, energy beings playing tag through the halls, living ships discussing philosophy, reformed weapons teaching art classes, and laughed. With this family, always. The Star Wanderer turned its bow toward the stars, carrying its precious cargo of dreamers, fighters and believers toward their next adventure. They had ended one story only to begin 1,000 more. Because that's what families do. They grow.